Hello, I'm Sam Glassenberg, CEO and founder of LevelX, and I'm going to be joined in a few minutes by Dr. Eric Gantwerker. He's a thought leader focused on the cognitive neuroscience of medical education, and he's also LevelX's medical director. Now, I'm going to begin this talk by presenting the problem, but I really only want to spend about 30 seconds on that problem because I feel that these are problems we're all very well versed in. And I really want to spend the remaining 29 minutes of this talk demonstrating real solutions and real results. So the problem statements, right? HCPs are becoming more and more difficult to reach. These are all challenges that we've covered, in a wide range of presentations, just like this one at this conference and others, right? We know that HCPs are becoming more and more difficult to reach, and this is a problem that's just exacerbated by the pandemic, right? That we used to be able to actually reach them in the clinic, and now we're trying to reach them through various online means. And if and when you actually can reach them, capturing their focused attention is becoming more and more difficult because they're increasingly distracted. Rep interactions are becoming shorter and shorter. Now it's measured in literally tens of seconds, and digital interactions are measured in single-digit seconds. Now, if you can actually capture a medical professional's attention, using that limited time to efficiently drive knowledge transfer and behavior change is nearly impossible. And let's just say, as we all know, PowerPoint slides and similar tools leave much to be desired. Now, the good news is there is a proven solution to all of these problems, and that solution is video games. Now, over the next 29 minutes, we're going to show you how your brand can use the technology and the neuroscience of video games to accelerate awareness and adoption of your products. So, using video game technology, we at LevelX have engaged over 700,000 medical professionals who've installed LevelX mobile games on their phones. But the beauty of video game technology is you don't even need to install an app on your phone anymore. So we have the ability now, using cloud gaming technology, your sales reps can actually play games collaboratively with your HCPs over Zoom or on your iPhone or desktop web browser. This is the promise of video game technology. It runs everywhere. So you can install you can install an application on somebody's phone, or you can access gaming content through the cloud, just in any browser on your phone, on your desktop, or collaboratively over Zoom or the web conferencing solution of your choice. And the same technology can actually support a whole team of medical professionals playing together on a peer-to-peer event, either in person, physically co-located, or over video conferencing like MS Teams or Viva. And beyond reach, using the neuroscience of video games, we've proven time and time again that our programs can drive not just seconds of engagement, but minutes of engagement at scale. And we're able to do it every single time across dozens of customer programs and games. The average engagement time in our games is over 13 minutes per session among medical professionals. And for individual in-app programs, we're averaging 4 to 6 minutes. Now, most of these engagements are actually just delivered in these short 1 to 2 minute cases and levels, but our averages are a multiple of that because the content is so enticing. We're able to create content that doctors deliberately play through multiple cases and play cases over and over again to improve their score. So unlike a video where they might, start watching a few seconds and skip, they're actually playing through a level and then playing through another one and potentially replaying that content over and over again to get a better outcome with a virtual patient, or to get to that diagnosis faster, or just generally to improve their score. Our games are deliberately used to extend that rep visit, both in person and online. They're used to reach doctors one-on-one, as a group, or to reach them on their own time, on their own device. But the real benefit of using video game neuroscience isn't just the extra time that you get with a doctor. These tools can be used to literally rewire the brain. And we've done this across multiple specialties. We've seen these solutions dramatically increase knowledge retention and improve decision making. With every program, we can directly measure improved performance. Doctors go from making the wrong decisions to making the right ones. Their dosing improves. They diagnose patients faster. They retain knowledge. And our clients are able to consistently measure performance using our HCP level data, which is why they continue to run and expand these programs year over year. And so using a toolbox of validated MLR compliant video game mechanics, we're able to consistently increase disease state awareness. We're able to improve decision making. We're able to disseminate new guidelines and reinforce best practices. And most importantly, we can help doctors develop a mental model for complex systems. Things like the mechanism of action or disease. We can actually help doctors intuitively understand how these things work by letting them interact with it and play with it. And we can also help physicians better retain knowledge about clinical study data. Which brings us to the most important question. And this is the question that I want you to think about. It isn't just what would you, where do you want to reach your HCPs? And it isn't just, what would you do with many minutes of digital engagement? The really important question is, if you could get inside the head of your prescriber and change something, right? Literally rewire their neural network, what would you change, right? If you could change how they diagnose, what questions they ask, what tests they order, what rare diseases they think about. If you could change how they consider which patients might be indicated for a certain treatment. If you could change how they make decisions along the patient journey or how they dose, what would you change? What behaviors are your representatives seeing that's resulting in errors, that's resulting in bad outcomes, that's resulting in patient dissatisfaction, misperceptions about your product? If you could change one behavior, what would you change? Because this is fundamentally all the technology that we build at Level X is in service of this, advancing the practice of medicine through play, using the science and technology of video games to help accelerate the adoption of new products in medicine. And in order to do this, we've amassed a unique team that includes some of the top video game designers, artists, and engineers from the consumer video games industry. These are the talented experts that have built everything from Mortal Kombat to Call of Duty to Words with Friends. And we've teamed them up with hundreds of physician contributors and advisors across multiple specialties, and also with in-house experts in medicine, in pharma marketing, in digital distribution, across multiple specialties and disciplines within healthcare, working together to capture the challenges of the practice of medicine and accelerate the adoption of new techniques in the field. And so Level X, as a result, is partnering with a slew of the most ambitious pharmaceutical companies and life science companies to develop solutions for them, to use this toolbox of game mechanics to change, to improve behavior, to improve decision-making, and really sort of create what is the future of physician interaction for pharma brands, and delivering a level of engagement and a level of interactivity and thrill that doctors will come to expect from the next generation of training and marketing. So over the past 3 decades, and what I want to do is spend a little bit of time, I'll hand it off to Dr. Gantwerker to talk about, I talk about the neuroscience of video games. What does that mean? Over the past 30 years, the video games industry has distilled a neurochemical recipe for changing behavior at scale among any audience. And Dr. Gantwerker is going to talk about that scale. Expert video game designers understand how to hit the perfect balance of reward and frustration, of skill and challenge to literally maximize dopamine release in the brain and maximize learning. And to talk more about that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Eric Gantwerker, who is a renowned expert on the subject of not only game design, but its specific applications in medicine. Dr. Gantwerker?
Thank you so much, Sam. Happy to be here. So my name is Dr. Eric Gantwerker. I am a pediatric otolaryngologist in academic practice in New York, and I also am the medical director of Level X and been with Level X since the very beginning. And my focus is mostly on educational technology, motivation of learning, and I actually got a master's in medical education is sort of where my background is. Really one of the things that we've really realized over the years, as Sam has alluded to, is that games are not just for children anymore. We realized that the games industry is actually a $90 billion business that got rapidly accelerated during the pandemic. And actually forecasts right now are that it's going to be a $257 billion industry as of 2025. I mean, this is big business. This is not just for kids. In fact, we know that the average age of a gamer is now about 35 years old. So we're not talking about your little kids' games. This is really a big business, and it's expanded into much older audiences because, again, as Sam has discussed, we really understood how games can actually apply and be fun, but also allow people to learn. Sam always says there's a reason why your kids know 100 Pokemon characters, but they don't know 40 US presidents. There's a reason why that is, and it's really the neuroscience that Sam was talking about and how people learn and how games deeply understand that and deliberately designed to create those. And we know that actually 2.6 billion people, a third of the world's population, play games. I think this, again, was rapidly accelerated during the pandemic, and really the digital industry as a whole, as well as video games, really benefited from this. And really one of the things that we've realized is games are now where the people are. It's on your phone, it's in your home, it's on your web browser, it's everywhere you need to be. And that really plays to what Level X's expertise is and what we're really taking advantage of from a distribution standpoint for our content. And when you think about some of the games, you may think about things like Angry Birds or Pokemon Go, really understanding some of the really even simple games, but you don't understand necessarily the neuroscience and the deliberate design techniques that are being used on the back end. And we're going to dive into a little bit of those theories and how they come to fruition within the games. So there's a lot of different cognitive theories that we're going to talk about. One of them is deliberate practice. In medicine, we really are tried and true to deliberate practice. This is trying to achieve mastery through practice. Games have known about this for decades. And we understand that hours and hours spent playing games, you get better with time. And actually what happens is the game will present you with a challenge that's just beyond your abilities. And you will practice that game over and over and over again to try to achieve that challenge. The same thing happens with medicine. The same thing happens with education. And there's very specific techniques that games use to keep you into this very task-specific deliberate practice. And we're going to talk about those theories. One of the other things that games really take advantage of is something called desirable difficulty. We realize that when you're actually teaching somebody, if it's really, really easy, they're not going to learn very much. It has to be difficult, but it can't be too difficult because then they'll get very frustrated and anxious and they'll disengage. Instead, we want something called desirably difficult. It means that it's just enough beyond your reach that you're going to do that deliberate practice to try and achieve it. And it's really important to keep people on the edge or just beyond the edge of their abilities. And that's what games have been doing for decades. This is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He's actually a Hungarian-born psychologist who coined the term flow. And flow, he noticed in elite athletes, it was this ability to create a very intense concentration period and maximize most efficient learning that ever happens during those flow states. Your kids or you may have played games where you completely lost track of time, or you were doing something in surgery. We don't realize we haven't peed in 6 hours or 8 hours or haven't eaten. And that's really that flow state. And there's very specific things that actually set up that flow state. And that's how games are deliberately designed to get you into that flow state. And one of the things that we talk about, if we're just going to use a simple example like Angry Birds, Sam really talked about the reward and frustration and some of the dopamine releases. And, we like to talk about it harkening back to when we were cavemen and when we had to throw spears. And when you threw a spear and it just missed the animal, you got very frustrated and you tried to practice and try to get it better. And then eventually, when you were able to, be able to catch your next meal, you were elated. Well, the same thing happens in Angry Birds. You actually pull the little bird back to try and destroy the scene or hit the pigs, and you just miss. And you figure out, okay, what's my new strategy? And this very, very rapid iterative cycle of attempt and feedback, and it's near immediate feedback, is actually what starts to create that flow state, because you're trying to create a strategy to improve your performance, and you're going to practice, 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 especially on difficult levels. And that's where the flow state is actually achieved. And this is actually one of the secret sauces of games. We're giving you an insight into the secret sauce. But, as we talked about, games are an opt-in experience. If you're not enjoying your experience, you're going to opt out. And the games industry, like we said, $257 billion is not going to let you opt out. So one of the things that we actually see in games is we will actually upskill people and keep the challenge just beyond their abilities. But then when you get to the next level, you realize that your skills are beyond the challenge, and you get this big dopamine release like, oh, I'm doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden the game will slowly ramp up the challenge. And then again, you are in this flow state where you're trying to learn, okay, the challenge has increased. My skill level is not there. How do I improve my skill? And that's through trial and error and practice, and which ultimately leads to long-term engagement with the content. The other thing that we know is that memory is very, very strongly tied to emotion. You'll remember something that is very activating in your life, whether it be negatively activating, like stressful or makes you upset or nervous, or whether it's in the top right corner, which is the activation and pleasant area. Games live in this space. Sam always talks about those 100 Pokemon characters. The reason why is because when you are activated and you're having fun, that emotion gets tied to that memory, and that memory then gets stored in long-term memory, and it's actually easier to access and blunts the forgetfulness curve and increases knowledge retention. And obviously, there's lots of different studies that show how games can actually transfer to real life. This is just a small selection of them, but we know people that play games have better skills when it comes to practicing medicine. And we know people who have learned through games on medical relevant material do better and transfer that knowledge, just like any of the other types of software-based solutions that then transfer to actual clinical practice, improving behavior, improving performance, and ultimately with the hope of improving patient outcomes. With that, I give it back to you, Sam.
Thank you, Dr. Ganwerker. So what I think we're going to do now is we've talked about a number of examples of different game mechanics and the neuroscience of games. Let's actually show some examples of applying these methodologies in medicine. So we're going to go and show some demos of applying these techniques to specific training challenges in different specialties. First, what we're going to do, in a minute, I'm going to demo some games on my phone. But first, what I'd like to do is actually demo our remote play platform, which is where we're using video game cloud gaming technology in order to enable multiple people in multiple locations around the world to interact with the same virtual experience. We use this in surgery to capture surgical challenges. The first example that we'll use is purely clinical. So we'll walk through an example of a clinical diagnosis puzzle and a treatment strategy game. So Dr. Ganwerker, I just sent you the link. So you can just click it on your phone and we can go through, you and I will interact with this experience together. Okay. So this mechanic that we're demonstrating here, this is an example of using puzzle game mechanics to capture the challenge of diagnosis. So a number of the clients that we work with, their brands are, often it's, we work with a number of rare disease brands and other examples where their primary challenge is getting doctors to consider certain rare diseases that they otherwise might not have on their radar. So we want to increase the rate of diagnosis. And so what we're doing here is we've captured the challenge of diagnosis as a video game. So what's going on is, this example is in pulmonology, but we've applied this across multiple specialties. And so, attempts have been made in the past to try to, quote unquote, gamify diagnosis. But those really aren't like, what they'll do is they'll present a patient case and they'll ask you to guess what the right answer is. But this really doesn't capture the reductive and deductive reasoning puzzle that's involved with diagnosing a difficult patient. So what we did is we actually took two of the top puzzle game designers in the country and put them on the challenge of capturing diagnosis as a video game. And this is the result. So they prototyped, they came up with about 20 different designs. We prototyped 8 of them. We tested them on over 100 diagnosticians until we converged on this. So my patient presents with a chief complaint, in this case, difficulty breathing. And I've got 56 diseases that it can be. I'm not going to reward you for guessing the right answer. What you need to do is you need to order the right tests and ask the right questions in the right sequence in order to get to the target diagnosis as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So Dr. Gantwerker, you and I are here interacting with the same virtual patient. I'm going to stop clicking my mouse. You've got it on your phone. Patient presents with difficulty breathing. What's the first round of tests you're going to order or questions you're going to ask?
I'm going to start with questions, especially with somebody with difficulty breathing. So I'm actually going to ask about shortness of breath. Let's ask about any kind of cough. And then let's ask about chest pain, because that, obviously can be bad.
Perfect. So we'll go and run those tests. And now what happens is we actually build up a little bit of suspense here. It doesn't take us time to run those tests. What we want is we want the player to be sitting in suspense to wonder, all right, that test I just ordered or that question I asked, right, is that going to actually eliminate diseases, or are the results going to be useful and get me toward my goal or not?
So it seems like the shortness of breath question was a good one. I actually eliminated 9 diseases. Cough eliminated 2. I'm guessing some of those got eliminated during the shortness of breath question. And same thing with chest pain or pressure. So good thing that there's nothing bad there.
Yeah. And so now we get this rewarding sequence as you go from 56 potential diseases down to 45, and you have 5 moves remaining. So this really becomes a challenging puzzle where you're really forced to make trade-offs. Obviously, you can ask questions, and that's easy and only uses 1 point per turn. But as you get farther down, there are tests that become more expensive and more time-consuming and consume more points. And so the objective of the game is to try to get as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible to not only the correct diagnosis, but eliminate the other 55 differentials. So here what you see is an example of a game that's been deliberately designed to capture the challenge of rare disease diagnosis as a video game. This is just one of dozens of applications of this toolbox, which allows us to use game mechanics and combine them in unique and interesting ways to capture medical challenges. So in this case, it's very focused on rare disease diagnosis, but we have numerous other examples that we can show as well. All right, 3 turns remaining and 20 different diseases. So I think what we're going to do is, in the interest of time, we'll skip out of, we'll finish up this demo, and we're not going to give away the right answer. You can play that on your own. We'll go to another example that actually continues off of this one. So in this example, this is using one of our patient journey treatment mechanics, where we're basically, we've gone from the last sequence where the patient is actually, I'll give it away, the patient is just diagnosed with sarcoidosis. And now what we're doing is we're having you walk along the patient journey. This is a strategy game where at every step along the patient journey, you need to make a clinical decision. And what you're trying to do is optimize for some factor. In this particular case, we're scoring you based on specific elements. But the beauty of this of these mechanics is we can combine them any which way we want. So we always do this based on the information that we have to work with. So, depending on what is represented in the clinical study data will dictate essentially, what data can we explore in an MLR and regulatory compliant design. So in this case, Dr. Gantwerker, patient presents with sarcoidosis. Do you want to put the patient on a steroid or follow up in 2 months?
Yeah, I'm not a pulmonologist. I'd phone a friend, but I think in this case, I'd probably start the patient on steroids. They seem to be pretty symptomatic.
Go ahead. And so now 2 months have passed. We're getting good results on the steroids. Do you want to keep the patient on the steroids, or should we taper because we're concerned about side effects?
Let's keep them on it and see what happens.
All right, I'll go and move that for you. All right, 3 months later, we're further into the patient journey, and patient improves, but now we've got weight gain. And so now what we're able to do is sort of explore, we're able to sort of walk through, the sampling of the clinical studies to really see, understand what are some of the trade-offs of decisions along the patient journey. And so this continues, and this can of course be, right now we're representing this as a 24-month period. We're making a sequence of decisions every 2 or 3 months, but we have versions of this where we do it. Where decisions have to be made every day over the course of a 14-day treatment regimen. So really, these game mechanics are designed to be really flexible and to, really only utilize, scoring or representing data that we really can pull from clinical studies to make sure that everything we represent is fully compliant. So now what I'm going to do is talk a little about what it's like to work with LevelX. So over the last 5 years, we've been working with pharma companies like Baxter and Merck and Amgen across dozens of brands, deploying sponsored programs that have garnered thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of HCP engagements per program, capturing the focused attention of doctors for an average of anywhere from 4 to 12 minutes per program. And we're doing it to promote learning, to disseminate knowledge, and to change behavior, and ultimately accelerate the adoption of new products through the neuroscience and technology of video games. All of these engines that I'm showing you in these examples are MLR compliant by design. So once we understand what your approved messages are, what your clinical studies show and don't show, what elements of your MOA are known or unknown, our team will configure these engines to maximize interactivity and reward while maintaining compliance. And we've been through hundreds of successful MLR reviews by being very, very deliberate about how we utilize these tools. And we can combine the elements of these engines in completely new ways to build tailored solutions. So for examples where we need to focus on some very specific behavior change, or there's some specific dosing mechanic that we want to explore, that's where we develop custom tailored solutions for any brand need. And again, it's video game technology. So your HCPs can interact with this content from anywhere. They can, we can put it inside one of our apps where we have over 700,000 medical professionals playing, or they can interact with it from a web browser on their phone or on their desktop, just like Dr. Gantwerker and I were doing a minute ago. In fact, we can even take this and put it on your website or integrate it into, put it on your sales reps' iPads, or just like we showed, share it over a Zoom session or a conference presentation. And of course, we have our own downloadable apps that are available across multiple specialties, where we can actually embed your content and drive HCP audience. So this is where we're able to drive, this is where we, LevelX is able to drive our own audience and our own doctors and other medical professionals to engage with your content. One example of this is coming soon. This is, so we have games in cardiology and gastroenterology and pulmonology and anesthesia. Our next game is in dermatology, which is actually a knowledge game, where we're employing proven game mechanics from brain training games, hidden object games, and memory games to drive diagnostic and knowledge retention skills among dermatologists. In order to do this, we actually built from scratch a system using cutting-edge video game graphics technology that actually enables us to recreate any skin disease on any region of skin, on skin of any color and under any lighting environment. So all of these images that I'm showing you here from Top Derm are actually all computer generated out of our game engine, creating images that just simply don't exist in the literature. And we're able to do it down to the pixel. So we can literally represent different severities of disease. If you want to show, disease that covers exactly 72% of a region, our technology is capable of doing that. We literally track everything that HCPs do in our games. So we can track every interaction, every decision that they make, and we can do it across their journey over time. So we can measure knowledge retention. We can measure what decisions are they making before we present them with information. What decisions are they making afterwards? We can present them with a virtual patient presenting with any condition or any symptom and see how they react. And then we can take all of that data and on a per HCP basis, we can share that with our partners around their sponsored content. So that helps drive insights on your side. So we literally can, get insights into how doctors think and how their behavior changes. And then we can literally, we can provide that data to you on a per HCP basis so you can run your own performance studies, so you can, have triggers in your CRMs, so you can, inform your sales reps, you can personalize content, and even, send direct mail to reach out to your HCPs. So if you're interested in exploring any of these solutions, you'd like more demos of any of our example content across different specialties or capturing different elements of the patient or physician journey, different clinical challenges, we'd love to show you. Please reach out to us at partnerships@levelx.com. We also have LevelX representatives at our virtual booth here at the virtual conference who will be available to answer any additional questions that you have over the next couple of days. Thank you very much.